this without any uh, without any intention also, these assets are likely to be seized. When you find that some assets which have been seized by the department are explained, then you have a option. You have a option that you can make an application within 30 days from the end of the month in which search has been concluded to your assessing AO, and then AO is duty bound to dispose of your application within 120 days from the end of the month in which search is concluded, after taking the approval from the CIT and DIT, as the case may be. So, so, uh, therefore, explained assets, if any, that can be got released by this kind of mechanism. Of course, explained assets will be released after adjusting the existing liability standing at that time. What can be the existing liability at that time? Any demand may be there, or there may be assessee may be treated to be an assessee in default in a representative capacity or otherwise also. Then these amount can be adjusted while releasing the explained assets also. So this is the act which says that even the explained assets, against the explained assets also, the existing liability on that day can be adjusted. Normally, after the search, in family some crisis take place. Either there will be conflict between the family members or some fight amongst the family members. So they forgot that this is the legal action which has taken place. So it is what kind of further kind of correspondence should be made with the department. So it is duty of the tax councils that in a shortest possible time, that letter should be written to the different authorities for release of for adjustment of cash seized. Though I have told you that with effect from 1st June 2013, this is no more advance tax liability is no more treated as existing liability, so cash seized cannot be appropriated. But it is better to write a letter so that if later on this decision, some modification or some changes takes place, then in that case you will have this chance to plead that interest under 234B, 234CB in these circumstances should not be charged, because you have already made an application for appropriation of the cash seized against the advance tax liability. Application, and secondly, the most this important benefit you may get, that if the delay is not attributable to you, delay is on the part of the department, so probably your board has issued an instruction for waiver of interest under 234A, 234B, 234C, and therein one condition is that delay has occurred because of the inaction on the part of the department in not releasing the books of account, in not giving a cooperation with the assessee. Then in that cases you may your interest, you may plead for waiver of interest, and DG and CC, after considering your application, they may waive the interest charged under 234A, 234B, 234C also. So these are the inherent benefit which are attached to this kind of this cooperation from the side of the assessee. So it is better, after the search takes place, the tax council should advise, sit over the whole case, see the case, and thereafter plan what to do, to whom we should write a letter, what should be, who's the concerned authority, ADI or assessing officer. Appropriately letter should be addressed wherever it is necessary. So some suggestions have been given in these guidelines. Now one more, it is important to highlight, now more or more burden is being cast upon the assessee. Now, there are so many presumptive provision in the Income Tax Act. If particular situation exists, then it is the duty of the assessee to prove that this is not true. Now, with regard to 292C, now it says that if something is found during the course of research or during the course of survey, then it will be presumed that it belongs to the assessee whose premises are searched or surveyed. Its contents are true. Signature and handwriting and stamping and executions are of the person who is supposed to sign these papers. So these are the certain presumptions. In this regard, it reminds me one incident of Ulhasnagar. What happened in that case? That one authorized officer during the course of a search found some books wherein there was a profit and loss account was appearing, when balance sheet was appearing. So he said he questioned about that profit and loss account and balance sheet to the assessee. Then assessee said, sir, this is not my this was not my actual profit and loss account and balance sheet, and this is my daughter is in BCom. She has prepared some balance sheet and profit and loss account from the textbook, but textbook was not there at that time. So question arose whether this is really what he is saying is correct or not, because presumption is on the assessee to prove that these books of accounts does not belong to me or does not belong to my business. So it is the burden on the assessee. But at that time he could not satisfy the authorized officer and these notebooks were seized. Later on, then after doing the lot of search, they could trace out the textbook. Then they could justify at the higher forum that yes, these are the notebooks. They are not the assessee really books of account. They are the actually some solutions have been done by the by her daughter. So this kind of problem may arise because the presumption is against the assessee. If something is found from your premises, you have to prove it does not belong to you. Content of this is not correct. So this kind of situation may sometime arise, and in reality this has arisen, as I have told you, in case of one search took place in Ulhasnagar. Now, the most important, ultimately, after search and seizure operation, the most important thing is now assessment. How to do the assessment? Ultimately, assessment is important. All these actions are just to facilitate the proper assessment. So, what are the, as I have told you, in assessment, what is important? Assessment year is important, assessee is important, income is important, and then you have to see whether deemed income or deemed expenditure, that is also important. So, keeping in view that the requirement of the Act, I have suggested some way how to arrange all the transactions in this what format. So I have suggested that please arrange systematically and chronologically, arrange all the seized document entity wise and assessment year wise. For that, get the transaction entered in the Excel sheet, preferably in the following column: name of the entity, date, amount, narration of expenditure, narration of income, narration of investment, and also premise from where it has been seized. Why I have suggested this premises? Because sometimes it happens assessee may be able to recollect in what connection that paper was written. For example, a paper is seized from the warehouse, then immediately he will come to know that it may be relating to some goods which have come in and which have gone out. So it will help if you enter in making the particular stand in explaining the transactions. Benefit of telescoping and peak credit. That can be taken. Now, one more important thing, that sometimes because in the 153 and 53C we issue the notice for 6 assessment year preceding to such years. So question arises, if some transaction pertain to 7th year, then whether 148 action is possible or not. MP High Court says that the 6 year can be covered under regular the such provisions, and 7th year can be covered under 148. Now, one more with regard to this. Now, if the notice have been issued for 6 years, then all the pending assessment will be abated. Now, question arises, there will be in this scenario there will be two circumstances where assessments are pending and where assessments are not pending. Then in that case, what will be the situation? Now, the view after this lot of deliberation, view which has emerged, or which is a correct view, that in the pending assessment, if the assessments are pending, then the assessment is to be framed taking into account the issue involved in the pending assessment plus the amount which are involved in the papers which are found during the course of search, means incriminating material found during the course of search. But in the completed assessment, only the document which have been found incriminating during the course of search, that should be considered. Not old assessment completed in the regular procedure should not be disturbed. So this is the view of the Rajasthan High Court. It is a good decision, one should go through. But there is some controversy on this issue, but we don't know what will happen in the higher forum. But this is the view which has emerged, that this is in my view, the view is that the view taken by the Rajasthan High Court is quite logical, and it may be accepted by the Supreme Court also. So, some more important features of recording of satisfaction before invoking of the provision of section 115(3)(c) that has been held, that when assessing officer who is transferring the material under to another assessing officer, he should record the satisfaction before transferring the material to the concerned assessing officer. These are the silent features when it can be invoked. Since time is not very much, let me cover other things. Now, this is the decision of Supreme Court in the case of MEC Data Private Limited, which I have held that this kind of phrases avoid to when assessee make the disclosure, writing these phrases, voluntary disclosure, buy peace, avoid litigation, amicable settlement, etc., to explain its conduct. Now, Supreme Court has analyzed, and they say these excuses have no meaning within the eye of the Income Tax Act. Now, survey under Income Tax Act. Now, this is the relevant provision is 133A. The survey, the difference between the survey and search. In the search, recording of the satisfaction is a must, but in survey there is no such requirement. However, when the additional CIT or joint CIT authorizes for survey, at that time they see that whether the facts justify doing the survey or not. So it is not a mandatory requirement, but there are the administrative guidelines that we normally take the precaution that why you want to do the survey. You spell out the reasons, and then after recording the reasons, we are doing the survey. But since there is no statutory requirement, therefore it is not a subject matter of challenge by way of writ before the High Court. As far as the challenging of the 132 action is concerned, that can be done, but not action under 133A. So this is this, and 133A survey is done on the basis of territorial jurisdiction, assessee specific jurisdiction, or he may be having authorized jurisdiction. Either he may be having the jurisdiction under 127(1). So this is the authorized jurisdiction. Normally, controversy arises whether during the course of a search that authorized officer or surveying officer can visit the assessee house. Now, question in this regard is that if during the course of survey they come to they have information, or assessee states that books of account or business assets are lying in the house or in the premises of the chartered accountant or in the premises of advocate or lawyers, then they have a perfectly right to go to such places also. So all business related material, wherever it is kept, they can be checked, verified, physically verified by the surveying party. So to that extent there is an exception. Now question is how to handle the material which have been found during the course of a search. Now there is a one more alternative forum is available for settlement of the income tax matter, that is settlement commission. Now if you find that during the course of a search incriminating material of earlier years have been found, then and they are of substantial nature, then best forum to settle your matter will be the filing an application before the settlement commission. But two things should be remembered, that the settlement application can be made only if the proceedings are pending before the AO. If no proceedings are pending before the AO, settlement application cannot be made. And apart from monetary this disclosure of additional income of 10 lakhs in normal case, and in such cases 50 lakhs, other conditions is there that there should be true and full disclosure of income. And one more important condition is the manner in which income is earned, and he should substantiate the manner in which income is earned. So these are the three requirements which is a must when you apply for filing an application, when you think of making an application under 245C to the settlement commission. With this, friends, I close my presentation, and with this slide, these are some court decisions you may go through that will be helpful to you. And with this slide I will close my presentation. There are two kinds of people, those who do the work and those who take the credit. Try to be in first group, there is a less competition. That quote is of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. So better, now we are living in a regime where more or more we networking and licensing and PRO has taking place, more place of hard work. So friends, with this I close my presentation, and I invite next speaker to speak on this, to speak on company.
Good afternoon, viewers. My fellow speaker R.K. Gupta ji and Secretary of the committee, Mr. Bansal. I am here to discuss the issues and the provisions of New Companies Act 2013 relating to meetings directors, including independent directors. Friends, this is the act which has come into the operation in phases. I have not seen any other act which has come in such a way, and as of now both the acts are in operation in parts. Companies Act 1956 also and Companies Act 2013. I will give just timeline of this 2013 Act. This was passed by Lok Sabha on 18th of December 2013. Then it was passed by Raj Sabha on 8th of August 2013, and President got given his assent on 29th August, and 30th August is what gazetted as Act 18th of 2013. Friends, there is a slight, very short comparison of the 2013 and 1956 Act. This Act has 29 chapters instead of 13 in 56 Act, and sections have been reduced from 658 to 470, schedules from 15 to 7, but in old act there were not rule, but in this act at about 400 places it has been provided that as prescribed. So it means there will be at least 400 rules apart from the sections. So this act is more rule prone act, rule driven act, I will say. One more thing, the act has been enacted in phases, which is which is giving some practical problems to the corporates also, to professionals also, and to the government departments also. See, some of the sections are applicable today, some of the sections are not applicable today, some of the sections are related to the 1956 are applicable. So there is something confusion. Particularly, I will refer one section 185 and 186. 186 relates to loan to directors. It is applicable with effect from 12th of September 2013. But loans and investment section, which relates 186, it is not applicable as of now. And old section related to 372 is applicable as of now. So from 12th of September, 97 sections and part of the section 2 became applicable. Wherever the section will be applicable, I will refer, I will mention that it is applicable. And I am not referring all the provisions of the meetings and directors. I will be discussing only very important issues and the provisions which have come as a new, or there is a modification, or some provisions have gone. So for the benefit of the professional brothers. So meetings, everyone knows there are annual general meetings, extraordinary general meetings, meetings of the board of directors, and meeting of the committee. These are all related to the management of the company. There are some provisions which have been changed in this new act. 1% company is a new concept in this act that is not required to hold any annual general meeting. And first annual general meeting within 9 months from the closure of the first financial year of the company is to be held, and any next annual general meeting within 6 months from the close of the financial year. New Act says that AGM can only be held between 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. This is the time limit given in the Act itself. And there is a new thing has come. Now AGM can be held on holidays but not on national holidays. It means you can hold the meeting on Sundays and other holidays, but not on national holidays, that is 2nd October, 26th January and 15th August. And gap of the two AGM should be minimum 15 months, not more than 15 months. ROC has power to extend the this AGM time for maximum 3 months, but first AGM cannot be given any extension from the ROC. There is a new provision that this section 97, that power of the tribunal to call the AGM. In case there is no AGM held by the shareholders or the management, then on the application by any member, this tribunal may order to hold the AGM. And in that direction, tribunal may say that only one person or as a proxy may form a quorum for that particular AGM. Similarly, general meeting, tribunal may order on his own, on a suo motu, or on by making application by a director or a member entitled to vote. This is very important section. This is related to the old section 169, this general meeting on requisition. So this I referred in the beginning that we got some problem, practical problem in making the implementation in phases. This section is applicable as of now. This says that company having a capital not less than 1/10 of the total paid capital having voting right, and if company is not having any capital, then not less than 1/10 of the total voting power of all the members may apply for a requisition to hold the meeting and pass some resolution. Now see the difficulty. Suppose today I want to issue a requisition to the company to hold a meeting on requisition under section 100 for the appointment of the directors or removal of the directors. Then I will make the requisition under section 100 of the Companies Act 2013. But in the application, I will say that I request to hold the meeting under section 100 to pass the resolution for the appointment or removal of the director under such and such section of Companies Act 1956. So in one application, I will refer to Act at present. There is some new small provisions have come. What kind of how notice is to be issued to for the general meeting? Now, general meeting notice can be issued by electronic mode, means emails. It should be issued to all the director mandatory now. In present act, means Companies Act 56, it was not required for all the directors, and